First off, I'd like to say I'm happy that the One Piece live action adaptation is doing well because it's one of the fastest Netflix shows to ever get renewal in Netflix history, with getting a renewal within 14 days, and the shortest period before that was 17. So congrats to everyone involved. However, looking back, were things kind of stretches of the truth? Were things lies? Well, I'm going to give you a little quote here.
East Blue arc is fairly episodic. And so one of the things that we've had to try and do is what exists in the canon, because that's always what we come back to. We know a hell of a lot more about this story now than we did when it started. So what are some things in the world already that we can use to try and make the story feel a little bit less episodic in the beginning? Not betraying anything, but just trying to give it a little bit more connective tissue. Because once you get to the Grand Line, like, it's on.
East Blue doesn't have any connective tissue. You see, this what kind of makes me concerned for a season 2, because that is not entirely true. Because you're saying that as if the plot points of the live action are original, but they kind of aren't. So this attempt to give the East Blue more connective tissue doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. You just sort of, swap parts out for other parts. So technically you aren't betraying anything, but you are kind of doing things in your own way. So this isn't necessarily a lie, but it's a weird half-truth that doesn't really make sense based on what's in the source material. So as we know, the live action adaptation is a weird homunculus of the anime and the manga. You got a lot of manga elements, but you also have a lot of anime elements. The whole plot surrounding the map, which takes up the majority of the show, is a anime element in parts, but it's mostly a manga element. Now, the map both exists in the anime and manga, which I made a folly on. I forgot about that part in my first video about that when I spent an hour yelling about this. So that's true. What's a falsehood is that in the anime, specifically episode 3, it is said that Nami stole the map from Buggy, who stole the map from Morgan, who's the head of the 153rd branch. So the map belonging to Morgan's branch is technically true, I guess you could say. However, the order of who takes what is completely flipped around. In the live action adaptation, it is said that Nami takes it from the branch directly, not really stating why she would steal from the Marines, because the reason that she stole it from Buggy, because Buggy's a pirate, and that kind of goes with her philosophy of just hating pirates during that time in the story, which makes sense. She just steals from better and better pirates because it will just help her along in providing for Kokoyashi Village. That all makes sense. So her stealing from the Marines is just kind of a weird thing. Buggy stealing from the Marines is a weird thing. So in both cases, the anime and the live action are both wrong. It's weird because Buggy would have no reason to even own a map in the first place, seeing as how he comes from the Grand Line. So all in all, this is all very strange. I think the live action adaptation is a worse corruption of this, because at least in the manga and anime, it makes a bit more sense. Not that Buggy having the map makes sense, because it doesn't, but the fact that Nami would take the map from Buggy because Buggy is a pirate and stealing from pirates is her MO, that makes a lot of sense. But Nami sneaking into a Marine base to steal the map is weird, because there's no real reason for her to steal from Marines unless she was going to sell the map, but I don't think that's ever mentioned. So that's all very, very strange. Now, as far as the connective tissue goes, here's the thing. We have a connection, in the anime at least, between now Buggy and Morgan. Of course, you know there's a connection between Morgan and Kuro, or Klahadore, Kuro's alias, right? The connection presented in the show doesn't make sense without Django, though, because it is Django who hypnotizes Morgan into thinking that he caught Kuro. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense that you're doing this whole plot and having this connective tissue with Morgan without Django. Like, you're replacing connective tissue with confusion at that point. It doesn't make sense, especially seeing as how he was Kuro's first mate. So we've taken out a extremely important character who becomes a reoccurring character further down the line for more emphasis on the Cat brothers, Sham and Bunchy. It were brother and sister in the live action adaptation, Sham and Bunchy. It's strange to me. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So that's why I say this is sort of a half truth, because you could say this is a betrayal because Django's going to keep popping up, and Django was a major character in this entire thing. It doesn't make sense for him not to be there. And the quote that I brought up from Matt Owens, the showrunner, was that he wanted to have more connective tissue, right? And on the topic of connective tissue in the show, we have Buggy and Arlong forming an alliance to get this map, okay? Or Buggy's forced into servitude to track down the map, okay? This is wrong. This doesn't make sense, because now, why would Arlong need the map? Why would Arlong require a map from the place he's running from? Because in the manga and in the anime and in the live action, we know that Arlong knows who Jinbei is, right? Jinbei is canonical in the live action adaptation. We're keeping that. Fine, fair. He's mentioned first in Arlong Park. That's absolutely correct. However, seeing as how he is being established here, okay, you know what that means? That means Arlong is still running. Why would he want to go back to the Grand Line? Nothing has changed. He's still weak. We know from Fishman Island that Arlong knows who Kizaru is. We know this from the manga and the anime. He knows that there are humans out there that will turn him into sushi. That's why he's running to the weakest sea in the world, because he can't cut it. He is a weak coward. He is cowardly. He can't cut it in the real pirate world. That's why he's running to the East Blue. There's no reason for him to try to find a map to go to the Grand Line again. Even in terms of where he comes from Fishman Island. He comes from the mouth of the New World, basically. You've seen all these strong pirates from going with Fisher Tiger and Jinbei. So you know you can't hack it. So why in the world would you write him in a way in which he thinks he can conquer the Grand Line? No, he can't. He can't do it. That's why he's here in the first place. Why would, if he was so proud of himself, he wouldn't need a map because he comes from the Grand Line, and he wouldn't go back anyway because he's too weak to go back. He would get mollywopped. That's the point. So I've made a bunch of videos talking about his crew, right? Hachi is in the show. Hachi looks like a random dude that we see in the manga and a random dude that we see from episode 36 of the anime. I don't know why they've credited him as Hachi. Hachi, again, is another character like Django, whom we see after his initial arc. Hachi shows up multiple times after the East Blue is over. So why replace him with a random filler fishman is beyond me, but okay. Also, Momu is not here. Momu, unlike the Lord of the Coast, shows up again after the East Blue is over. So again, we're met with another situation of removing kind of not so much important characters, but characters that are somewhat reoccurring. And getting back to the Syrup Village stuff, Mary dies in OPLA. Mary dies in Opla. So that's another character once again who does show up multiple times when we get these sort of milestones in which the crew gets bounty upgrades, right? Mary is shown to be in Sora Village with Kaya. So that's just weird that we're doing all these weird, unnecessary steps, which ultimately hurts the production moving forward. Because as you start removing more and more things and changing more and more things, it's going to start falling in on itself, because these things reoccur when you get to the Grand Line. They reoccur when you get to the New World. Momo shows up again. Hachi shows up again. Django keeps showing up. So that's just weird. Now let's just talk about the problems of a season 2. Okay, so Oda draws a funny little drawing of Chomper in his announcement of the show getting a season 2, right? Which, again, I'm happy that despite everything, the show has attracted new people. There are new eyes on One Piece. We are getting more movement in the West. That's good. What this has done for the franchise is good. Despite my discrepancies, this is good. Despite the half-truth/lies, this is good. But I'm wondering now, seeing as how this was successful, I hope that doesn't give them free reign to do whatever they want, because you have made some missteps so far that will affect things going forward. But seeing as how Matt Owens has sort of downed the 4Kids adaptation of One Piece,
also we all know the horrendous 4Kids adaptation.
I hope we don't meet the same trappings as the 4Kids adaptation, because the 4Kids adaptation was famous for cutting out the Twin Peaks and Little Garden to get to Chomper, because Chomper, the funny little doodle that Oda does on his work desk during the announcement, he is the marketing darling of the franchise, right? So I hope in lieu of corporate greed, we don't again start to cut very important establishing arcs for the narrative, because at the time, which I hope based on what he has said, we know this now, Laboon is important. Laboon is very important, because without Laboon, you don't have Brook. So yeah, I don't know. And without Little Garden, you don't have Broggy and Dory, and we are going to Elbaf, presumably next in the manga. And Elbaf is important for setting up Usopp's character. Broggy and Dory are important for setting up Usopp's character, and then Broggy and Dory show up again in a way that the relationship at least shows up again in Enies Lobby. So all I'm saying is that the cuts kind of need to slow down or stop, because you're going to start running into problems. Now, the logistics of doing Laboon, I can't even imagine. Then people are concerned about Chomper. Chomper isn't even the root of the issue. The root of the issue is Karoo. Karoo is a giant horse-sized duck belonging to Vivi. He shows up in Whiskey Peak and is a main character from that point all the way up to Alabasta. All right. So, and he's a reoccurring character that, again, like Mary, like Django, like Momo, he shows up multiple times after his arc is over. The saga is over, I should say. So you cannot cut him. He's also important to show that, yes, Chomper can talk to animals and being a weird, freakish man deer. So yeah, he is important. So the VFX team, I don't know what to say. Karoo's going to be a Herculean task to portray in any sort of flattering light. Then we have the concept of not just Chomper, but Zoans in general. Because if you remember, Drum is when we are formally introduced to the concept of Zoans. Not with Chomper at first, but with Dalton. Dalton is the guy who can transform into a buffalo, right? So the whole idea of a man becoming a weird buffalo man, or even a buffalo wearing like this weird green getup, is a visual nightmare to start to conceptualize, but we shall see how that goes. And then we hit the mother of all abominations, Wapol. How do you portray Wapol in live action? Even before you get to Wapol, the idea of what Little Garden is kind of ridiculous, because you almost have to make a mini Jurassic Park, and how it's portrayed. So the VFX budget is going to go crazy. I hope they have more budget based on the track record of how this show has been perceived. I would think it warrants more attention to be put into it, but I don't know. You need more than 8 episodes. Going from, I guess, Logtown, because that's where Smoker shows up. Though, seeing as how they didn't go to Logtown might not even be here. I don't know. But from Logtown to Alabasta is ridiculous, okay? I wonder how they're going to do that in even 12 episodes. Because condensing nearly 100 chapters into 8 was kind of, I would say, a clown show, even though Bucky was very prominent, so it kind of was a clown show. But it's not a clown show, but it's a task, okay? You need Logtown somewhere, because Logtown's too important. You need Logtown. You need the Twin Capes. You need the traversal of Reverse Mountain. So you need that. Then you need the Twin Capes. Then you need Laboon. Then you need Whiskey Peak, because I know they want to do the cool Zoro fight scene. You need that. You need Little Garden, because without Little Garden, you don't establish Baroque Works, you don't establish Crocodile, you don't establish Giants, which is that you don't establish Usopp properly. So a lot goes, you don't even establish Zoro and Sadi's rivalry technically, because that too starts in Little Garden. So Little Garden is super important. And then you need Little Garden to establish Drum. Okay. The problem with Drum is Wapol, because Wapol eats himself. He eats men. He fuses men into one man. He's awful. Wapol is just an awful, awful thing to conceive in live action. He eats part of the ship when he first shows up. He eats part of the Mary. He is ridiculous to even conceive. But okay, Wapol, right? Wapol and then Chomper. Chomper is such an interesting conundrum to me, because Chomper in the canon is a freak. Chomper is often mistaken for being a raccoon dog, because he's one of those creatures in One Piece that I guess the people of One Piece can't readily identify because he looks so alien looking. So how do you portray that in a way that it's not disgusting? Because you can't go the Marvel Rocket Raccoon route, because Chomper's not a raccoon. Chomper isn't a real animal in how he's perceived most of the time. He is a reindeer that has eaten a human fruit, and it stays in his hybrid form. His hybrid form is like this weird, like I said, this weird non-animal, really. And as you go on in One Piece, it's just further and further highlighted how strange he is, because he's not an animal man like your run-of-the-mill Zoan. He's not a mink, which is another animal man that's not a devilfruit related animal man. He doesn't look like any of those guys. He really is his own thing. So I don't know how you perceive or how you portray him in a live action setting in which he does not look disgusting. Because two, his cuteness really is saved by the style that he is drawn in, because Oda style is very semi-realistic. And it takes certain liberties with certain concepts so they don't look disgusting to you. They may at worst look weird. And then when you have Chomper, Chomper is also the first, I guess, reveal that Zoans aren't really fixated to 3 transformations, as he has 7 due to his Rumble Ball. So each one of the transformations are their own breed of freakish. The only one that's even palatable to the eye is Walk Point, really, when you think about him in a realistic form, because Walk Point is just his normal state, his reindeer state. So just make a reindeer wearing a hat. I mean, that's not too hard. But even Heavy Point, which is his human state, is this weird Sasquatch gorilla. That's awful. Then you have Jump Point, which looks like a skinwalker. Then you have Horn Point, which is a skinwalker with horns. Guard Point's fine, because Guard Point is just like a ball of fluff. That's not bad. So, an Arm Point. Arm Point is normal Chomper with gargantuan muscle arms with hooves on the end. Just the idea of that in live action is so awful to me. It looks disgusting. And there's been a meme going around of like Chomper looking like Detective Pikachu from the Pokemon movie. No, we're not getting that. Chomper is not one of those things that you can like pan away from. Both Chomper and Karoo are on screen. all the time. See, that's the issue. They're on screen all the time. And then Chomper does not go away as a problem. He remains on the crew. You can't get rid of him. You can't sidelight him. And there are times in which he is kind of like the main character in the group. You know, when they split off in various arcs, he is with Luffy or somebody else. You're not going to get rid of him anytime soon. And then the problem is just going to increase when you start getting characters like Frankie or like Brooke, who are around all the time. So we'll see what they do. I hope people keep that same energy that they have now and sort of turning a blind eye to mistakes, because they're only going to increase as we move forward. But hey, when people start changing their tune, I'm going to call people out, because this was the softball. East Blue was the softball, and they didn't even really get that right. I can't even say they got the spirit of it right, because what's also going to become a problem, which I couldn't believe that they did in live action, was Usopp's nose and Sanji's eyebrow. Okay. Usopp's nose, in being long, is referenced in the show because you have his Jolly Roger in that One Piece banner cut that they do at the start of each episode, right? The long-nosed Jolly Roger that Usopp has is in that cut, but it's not in the show. When Usopp presents his personal Jolly Roger as a flag, it's a modified version reflecting how the actor looks. But the joke is, which we find out is actually a part of his anatomy, which is weird, is that he has a long bone in his nose. That's the joke. He has a long nose. Internally, he has a nose bone that's long. So why are you using a joke that doesn't exist in this sort of format that you're presenting One Piece in? Okay? I'm not sure why you would do things in this manner when the joke has no context. Then I don't know who the joke is appealing to in the audience, because new people who have never heard of One Piece don't know about the joke, and then returning fans should be confused. It's a nice nod, but I mean, it doesn't amount to anything. It doesn't do anything, because you're not referencing something that's present in the source material. You're not referencing something that's present in the show. So the source material wouldn't matter here. Just make a whole new Jolly Roger, because you're emphasizing that the sniping is his most key trait now. So go for that. Why even focus on the long nose at all if it's not here? It's strange. Same thing with Sanji's curly eyebrow. The fact that that even has lore implications down the road means this was kind of doomed from the start. And both of these characters are called names via their most outstanding traits. So all of the insults thrown at them are gone. All the sort of humor surrounding each one of their traits is gone, and it has come up. For example, Usopp is called Needle Nose and Long Nose by various characters throughout the entirety of the series. Wazani, the weird noodle guy on the sea train, is actually made dizzy by looking at Sanji's eyebrow. So I don't know. And then of course Zoro calls him Dartboard Brow throughout the entirety of the series. So it's like not having that is going to become increasingly more awkward. And then we know, of course, the curly eyebrow is a sign of that Sanji is like a weird mutant, and it changes its swirl when he's activating his Germa genes. At least that's what's being implied, because it does sort of switch ends on when it curls. So again, mentioning that in Sanji's weird One Piece cutaway thing is strange, because you're referencing something that's not in the show. So I'm wondering, for Chomper, is he even going to be a reindeer freak now? Are you just going to make him like a small boy wearing a funny hat? I honestly ask you that, because I mean, you've changed so much already. What's stopping you from changing more? And then I don't really understand how you're going to pull off things if you're already cutting so much in an area of the story that does require a lot of special effects or a lot of attention to detail. Because the small details that didn't need to be changed, you've already changed, and now you're left in a worse spot. But you know what? Hey, we'll see when it comes out. We'll get what we get, because what we got, despite its reception, is mediocre. And I'm sure you'll get many a video a year from now saying, oh, was the One Piece live action really that good? You'll get videos like that, which will be kind of, what's a good word? It will be kind of just arbitrary. It's right to make something like that because you waited for the heat to die down. You waited for the honeymoon period to be over to make something like that instead of attacking it head on when the thing was hot. But hey, people do what they want to do, but we shall see how things turn out in the future. Thank you for watching. Give me your thoughts and I hope you enjoy.